My mother-in-law claimed she was homeless and said, "You don't deserve that house anyway." But 2 days later, my boss sent me a photo of her in a luxury resort. It started on a rainy Wednesday evening. The kind where the clouds hang low over the Cascade Mountains and every pine needle seems to drip sadness. I was standing in the kitchen in my wool socks, slowly chopping garlic for a stew, when Frances barged in. No knock, no call. Just two wheeled suitcases in her hands and a dramatic sigh that filled the house before her words did. Alan trailed in behind her, avoiding my eyes. "She has nowhere to go," he said quickly, like that explained everything. "They raised the rent again. It's criminal. She's on Social Security, Cam." Frances took off her coat and let it drop onto our entryway bench, my late grandmother's antique one, and looked around like she was already home. She didn't ask, didn't hesitate. "I can sleep in the guest room, of course," she said. "It's not like you use it much." She was smiling, but her tone had that familiar condescension, that smugness I'd grown to dread. And just like that, she moved in. Like a storm that you see brewing for weeks but can't quite stop. I've always had a tense relationship with Frances. From the moment Alan introduced me to her nearly 20 years ago, she seemed disappointed in me. Like she expected someone younger, someone flashier. She once told Alan within earshot, "Well, at least she looks like she can cook." Alan brushed it off. "That's just how she is." That line became his mantra over the years. When we bought our house 6 years ago, a 2-story craftsman with mountain views in the southwest part of Bend, Frances offered us a half-hearted congrats, then spent her first visit pointing out all the things she would change. I was used to her, but having her live with us was another level. Within 3 days, the house no longer felt like mine. She rearranged the kitchen cabinets. She moved my keepsakes to less cluttered spots. She changed the guest room curtains without asking, went out and bought lace ones, saying mine were depressing. Alan, he didn't see the issue. "She's trying to make herself comfortable," he said. "She's had a hard year." I didn't argue. I'd spent too many years swallowing my frustration to start a fight over curtains. But it built up. Every day was a reminder that this woman believed she had a claim over our lives, our space, and especially Alan. She'd make little digs during dinner. "Alan always liked beef stew. You don't make it the way his grandmother did." Or, "It's lucky I'm here, Camille. You work so much, Alan would starve." And the worst part, Alan never defended me. He never even noticed. One morning, as I was heading out the door for work, she intercepted me in the hallway. She was holding one of my ceramic vases, the blue and white one my mother gave me after our wedding. It was in her hands like it was nothing. "I'm thinking we need to refresh the vibe in here," she said, gesturing to the entryway. "Too sterile. This house doesn't feel lived in." I didn't know what that meant. I just said, "Please be careful with that vase." She looked at me and tilted her head. "You know, Camille," she said slowly, "this house never really suited you. You're cold. And you don't deserve it anyway." She said it like a throwaway comment, like she was describing the weather. Then she walked away. I didn't go to work. I sat in the car for 20 minutes, shaking. I decided not to confront her or Alan. Not yet. I needed time to think. I went into work the next day, feeling half out of my body. My boss, Peter, called me into his office around noon. He's the owner of the firm and not someone who wastes time. "I need to show you something," he said, unlocking his phone and scrolling through his photos. "You know this woman?" I looked down. There she was, Frances, wearing a designer-looking sun hat, sipping a drink with a little umbrella in it, lounging on a pool chair like a damn movie star. Behind her, the unmistakable stone architecture of the St. Regis Aspen Resort. I'd seen it before on brochures and during client retreats. That's my mother-in-law," I said, blinking. "She's supposed to be homeless." Peter raised his eyebrows. "My wife is there with some friends," he said. "They said she was bragging at the bar about scamming her son and daughter-in-law. Something about pretending she got evicted to move in with them for a while." The blood drained from my face. I don't know what I said after that. I left work early, drove home in silence. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My thoughts were louder than the engine. At home, the house was quiet. Frances was at yoga. Alan was working upstairs. I printed the photo from my phone. Put it on the kitchen counter. Wrote a single line underneath. "Ask your mother how a homeless woman affords Aspen." Then I packed a small bag and drove to my sister's place across town. I didn't call. I didn't text, I didn't explain. I slept like the dead that night for the first time in weeks. Alan showed up 2 days later at my sister's house. He looked tired, like he hadn't shaved or slept well. He had the photo in his hand. She said a friend invited her, he said. I didn't say anything, just stared. She didn't tell me she was going, he added. She said it was last minute. Her friend is covering the room. She said you misunderstood. She told me I didn't deserve our house, Alan. He looked at the floor. For the first time, really looked like he understood. I didn't know she said that. No, you didn't, I said, because you never ask. You never listen, you just defend her and let her invade every part of our life. He tried to apologize, I didn't accept it. I wasn't ready. That night, I told him I needed time. Real time, not a weekend, not a getaway. I needed space to breathe. I wasn't going back home until Francis was gone, and even then I wasn't sure I'd go back at all. Alan didn't argue. Not much, anyway. He looked like a man who'd just begun to realize the house of cards he'd been living in was starting to wobble. She said she'd go stay with a friend in Sacramento, he mumbled, like that would fix it all. I just nodded. I didn't trust a single thing that came out of Francis's mouth anymore, and truth be told, Alan's word didn't hold much weight either. Not after years of silent complicity. It took another week before I returned to the house, not because I missed it, but because I wanted to see with my own eyes that she was gone. I pulled into the driveway just after 7 in the morning. It was mid-March and the cold still nipped at the edges of everything. The porch light was on, and for a second I wondered if she was still inside, brewing one of her nauseating herbal teas and pretending to be queen of the manor. But no. The house was quiet. Still, I walked through each room like it was a museum exhibit. The curtains in the guest room were still that hideous pink lace, but the air felt different. Less monitored. I didn't speak to Alan right away. I just walked past him as he sat at the kitchen table, his coffee untouched. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 10 days. She's really gone, he said quietly. Good, I replied. We didn't talk much that first day. I mostly cleaned. I found remnants of her all over the place. Her vitamin bottles in the bathroom, a few scarves stuffed in the coat closet, a bag of Werther's Originals in the kitchen drawer. It was like she left pieces of herself behind, reminders of the control she had. I dumped most of it in a box and taped it shut. I'd decide what to do with it later. Over the next few days, I eased back into the house but stayed emotionally detached. I cooked for myself, took long walks with our dogs, Murphy and Sable, spent weekends with my sister. I needed to feel like me again, without the hovering, the manipulation, the slow-drip poison of constant judgment. Alan tried to reconnect. He started doing the things he hadn't done in years, making dinner, asking about my day, folding laundry without me asking. It was sweet, but it was also confusing. I knew the rhythm. I'd seen this part of the cycle before. He would try, I'd soften, and we'd fall back into old habits. But something had shifted this time. The photo in Aspen didn't just expose Francis. It exposed us. The imbalance, the lack of boundaries, the way he defaulted to her always. One evening, about 3 weeks after Francis left, I found Alan sitting in the living room with a notepad. He looked sheepish. I made a list, he said, of everything she did that made you uncomfortable. I wanted to understand it from your side. I took the paper. I didn't even read it. I appreciated the effort, but it wasn't about the list. It was about all the years he didn't make one. She's always been like that, Alan, I said, and you've always let her be. He nodded, his jaw tight. I know, and he did. That much I'll give him. He was finally starting to understand. But that didn't mean it was all going to go back to normal. About a month later, I got a message from a friend in Portland, Tanya, who used to work with Francis back in the day. Guess who I saw at Nordstrom today, she wrote. Your Mill. Said she was visiting her retirement boyfriend in Lake Oswego, looked fabulous. That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement of the lies. Just Francis being Francis, floating through life like she owned the world, always landing on her feet with someone else's help. Alan hadn't heard from her in weeks. She texts sometimes, he said, but I haven't answered much. I don't know what to say. I knew what I'd say, but I didn't think it would help to share. A few days later, I came home to find a letter on the counter. It was addressed to both of us, in Frances's perfect cursive. She always prided herself on her handwriting. She once said, only undignified women use email. I opened it slowly, almost curious. Dear Camille and Alan, I'm sorry for any misunderstandings that might have occurred during my stay. I never meant to cause friction in your marriage. I only wanted to be close to my son and make sure he was being taken care of, especially since Camille is always so busy. The trip to Aspen was a last-minute opportunity from a friend, and I didn't think it would cause such a stir. I would have explained if I thought it was necessary. Anyway, I'm happy and well, and I do hope to visit Bend again in the future. Perhaps we can put all this behind us. Family is what matters most. With love, Francis, I laughed out loud. The nerve. Alan read it too, he didn't say much. Just folded it and put it in the drawer next to our bills. You want to respond? He asked. No, I said. Let her sit in her version of the story. That summer, I started therapy. Not couples therapy, just me. I realized I had so much buried under the surface. Years of quietly making room for other people's needs. Of brushing off slights and enduring manipulation because I thought being the bigger person was noble. But what I really was exhausted. My therapist helped me see how my role in the marriage had been shaped by survival, not partnership. I didn't know how to ask for more. And Alan, he didn't know how to give it. He started going to therapy too, separately. I didn't ask him to. He said he wanted to figure out why he always defaulted to his mother's narrative, why her approval meant so much, even when it cost him everything else. I respected that. But we weren't rushing back into each other's arms. We were still sleeping in separate rooms, still operating like cautious roommates. Sometimes he made me laugh again. Sometimes I felt the old rhythm. But other times, I'd look at him and wonder how much was real and how much had just been survival. And the house, it felt like mine again, little by little. I painted the kitchen a lighter shade of blue. I swapped out the guest room curtains and gave away the duvet Francis insisted was regal. I planted a new flower bed under the window, lavender and hydrangeas, 2 flowers she once said were too messy. That made me smile. Life settled into a quiet, cautious rhythm. By late summer, the house felt peaceful again, almost sacred. There were no sudden footsteps in the hallway, no uninvited critiques about my cooking or how I folded laundry. Just me, the dogs, and my growing ability to breathe. Alan and I were polite, even gentle with each other, but the old closeness never really returned. I think we both knew it. There's something about betrayal, not just a partner choosing someone else, but choosing to not see you, that doesn't heal neatly. And while therapy helped, it didn't erase years of feeling like the third wheel in my own marriage. Then something unexpected happened. A letter arrived, not from Francis, but from a financial institution in California. It was addressed to Alan, and the envelope bore the logo of a private wealth management firm based out of Los Angeles. Alan left it on the counter unopened. I don't think he even noticed it, but curiosity got the best of me that evening. I handed it to him over dinner and asked, "What's this about?" He shrugged, barely glancing at it. No idea. Probably junk. He opened it halfway through his second glass of wine, then he froze. "What?" I asked. "She added me as a cosigner." "To what?" He blinked. "To her new condo in Lake Oswego. She used my name on a mortgage." I felt a rush of heat crawl up my spine. "She what?" "She must have forged it, or she used my info when I gave it to her for that rental application years ago. Camille, she bought property in my name." He looked panicked, pale. I leaned back in my chair, my pulse steady. "So she's not just lying to us anymore," I said. "She's committing fraud." We spent the next few days digging. Alan contacted the firm, then hired a lawyer. Sure enough, Francis had used his social security number and information to get approval for a condo under a shared purchase plan. She hadn't forged a signature, but she'd misrepresented the application. It was a legal gray area, but enough to involve some serious consequences. And for once, Alan didn't protect her. He filed a report with the financial authority. He demanded that his name be removed from the account and that all liability fall to her. The firm began an internal investigation. And then, karma took her cue. Turns out, the condo Francis purchased wasn't fully paid for. She had been making partial payments under the assumption that Alan would be responsible for the rest. The bank wasn't happy when his name was withdrawn. They flagged the mortgage. And just like that, her faux luxury setup began to collapse. She called Alan frantic, of course. "How could you do this to me?" She screeched loud enough for me to hear through the speakerphone. You did it to yourself, he replied, his voice calm but firm. I'm your mother. You're a fraud, he said. Then he hung up. I didn't gloat, not in front of him. But inside, oh yes, I savored every second. What followed was a slow, delicious unraveling. The story of Frances's scheme made its way to some of her former social circles, retired teachers, old coworkers, and even a local charity group where she used to volunteer read. Boss people around. Word spread fast, especially after the financial firm took public steps to protect itself. The retiring boyfriend? Gone. Apparently, he didn't sign up for a woman with financial baggage and a pending fraud report. She tried to paint herself as the victim, but the damage was done. Her reputation, always carefully curated, always just on the edge of arrogance, was in tatters. She eventually moved into a modest rental apartment in Eugene, paid for with what little remained of her personal savings. No more spa weekends, no more Aspen getaways, and the best part, Alan and I sold the house. It was my idea. One morning I sat in the sunroom, coffee in hand, dogs asleep at my feet, and realized I was ready to let go. Not because of Frances, but because that house carried too many ghosts. I wanted a place that didn't echo with arguments or sighs behind closed doors. Alan agreed. We sold it that fall, splitting the profit evenly. It was amicable. Quiet, no screaming, no drama, just the closing of a long, painful chapter. Now I live in a small craftsman cottage on the east side of Bend. It's cozy, filled with light. My garden is just mine. My kitchen is exactly how I like it. I hung a print over the mantel that says, "Make room for peace," a gift from my sister. Alan and I still speak occasionally. We're friendly. We both know the marriage ran its course. He's working on himself. I am too. Frances? I haven't heard from her in nearly a year. But last I heard, she tried to start a blog about silver luxury and had to shut it down when commenters started linking articles about her failed condo scam. Poetic, I never got an apology, I never expected one, but I did get something better. I got my peace. I got my space. I got myself back. And best of all, she lost the one thing she valued most, control. I may not have screamed. I may not have slammed doors or cut locks or thrown her bags into the street. But sometimes, the most satisfying revenge is simply walking away, while the other person watches everything they built on lies slowly fall apart. Quiet. Icy, irreversible, and utterly deserved.